areas. Okay, it's true, it's false, period. Okay, we represent them using letters. We can use P, Q, and R are the most commonly used. The truth value is whether or not it's true or false. Okay, so if I said that the sentence P was that a rectangle is a quadrilateral, okay? A rectangle is a quadrilateral. Is this sentence statement true or false? It's true. Okay. Or I could use the sentence Q and I could say squares are round. True or false? False. Again, no gray area. Rectangles do have 4 sides, so they are quadrilaterals. Squares are not round. Negation is the opposite meaning. So it's a statement with the opposite meaning. Okay, and negation is symbolized with a tilde, like that. And when you read this, you read it as not P. So I have P and I have not P. And not P would be a rectangle is not a quadrilateral. Okay. P was true, so not P is false. And not Q would be squares are not round. And this is true. So if you have a statement that's true, the negation becomes false. If you have a statement that's false, the negation becomes true. So negations are opposite meaning, opposite truth value. A compound statement is like a compound sentence. Okay, it is 2 statements joined with either and or. Okay. So we have 2 sentences put together. So you could say a rectangle is a quadrilateral and a square is round. Or a rectangle is a quadrilateral or a square is round. So you just put 2 statements with and or in between them. Conjunctions. Did you guys remember that song? Yeah. What's your function? Okay. Conjunctions are ands. Okay. So it's the statements joined by and. The symbol for and is an upside down V. Okay. So if I used my P and Q examples, I'd say P and Q. So it would be a rectangle is a quadrilateral. and squares are round.
That's what P and Q stands for?
Yeah, because remember we had P is that a rectangle is quadrilateral and Q is that squares are round. So if I say P and Q, I have both of them. A rectangle is a quadrilateral and squares are round. Okay, now here's how it works. If P and Q are both true, then your statement is true. If P and Q are not both true, or if I have false and false, or false and true, then my statement is false. They both have to be true in order for it to be true. Because I'm saying and, right? So a true one would be a rectangle is a quadrilateral and squares are equilateral. Those would both be true. So that would make the whole thing true. My current one is true and false. So this whole statement is false. If you have and the only way the compound statement is true, a conjunction, the only way a conjunction is true is if both parts are true. Okay? Now when you have a disjunction, oops. Okay, we're going to do disjunction real quick because I went that way. Disjunction is or. And those are a little different, and we'll come back to that. So how you tell if a conjunction is true or not is we look at the parts. The figure is a triangle. True. The figure has two congruent sides. True. The figure has three acute angles. False. So I have two true statements and a false one. So if I look at P, P is true, R is false. So true and false.
So what does the P and R
P, Q, and R are just the letter that we use to represent the whole sentence, so you don't have to write the whole thing out.
So we write false.
Yep. Because P is true, but R is false, and I use the word and, so the whole thing is false. If I say Q, that's true, not R. Well, R was false. That makes not R true. So I have true and true. So I get true.
What does that little sign mean?
This means not. Yeah, that's this sign right here. So if we were false, we're now true. If we're true, we would now be false. So it's just the opposite meaning. So if it was true and you put a not in front of it, it's now false, and vice versa. Okay, P is true, Q is true. So the whole thing is true. Not P. Well, P was true, so not P is false. R was false, so not R is true. So I have false and true, which makes the whole thing false. Okay, so the only way you get true is if they're both true.
So not P not P false?
Yeah, because not, if I put not or the tilde in front, it's the opposite.
So it's
yeah. Okay, questions on that? So this is two statements joined with or. And the symbol for or is a V, capital V. Now, the way it worked before is we had, let's say P or Q. If this is true and this is true, then the whole thing is true. if this is true and this is false, true or false. It's one or the other, right? So that is still true. The only way you get a false is if they're both false. So they're kind of like opposites. With and, they both have to be true in order to be true. With or, they both have to be false in order to be false. Yeah, can't be both. But if it's neither, it's still false. So when we look at these statements, January is a fall month. False, right? Because January is winter. January has 30 days only. False, because it has 31. January 1st is the first day of a new year. True. Yes, we're here. Okay, Q, false. R, true. So I'm saying false or true. That's true. P is false. Q is false. False or false is false. Not P is true. R is true. So true or true is going to be true. And I have R being true and P being false. So I have true or false. That's true. So again, the only way you get a false with an or is if they're both false. So we can do like a little summary. So if you're talking about true statements, with an and, the only way you can be true is if they're both true. Any other combination with an or, these are all true. Okay, with an and, any combination of true and false or just false is false. And with an or, the only way they're false is if they're both false. So here's kind of just like the breakdown of it. So these are all true. These are all false. So for our summary, negation is a statement with an opposite value. And it is symbolized with a tilde, and it's read as not whatever letter. Okay. A conjunction is a statement with and, statements with and the symbol is an upside down V. So P and Q. Disjunction is with or. And its symbol is a V. P or Q. Okay. When you are dealing with truth values, you can construct tables to see all the possible outcomes that can exist. And the most basic one is a negation table. So if I have P and I want to negate it, that gives me not P. Okay. And P can either be true or false. Those are my two options for P. Well, if P is true, then that makes not P false. And if P is false, that makes not P true. This is your most basic truth table.
Wait, how come one is, okay, one P is true, then is false, and
If P is false, then not P is true. Because the negation is always the opposite of what you have. So if you start with a true P, you end up with a false not P. If you start with a false P, then you end up with a true not P. Then we can make a table for conjunction. So P and Q is my conjunction. So I want to make a table for that. So I have a P, I'm going to have a Q, and I'm going to have the two of them together. Okay. If I start with a true P, and I'm joining it with a Q, I can have a true P and a true Q. Or I can have a true P and a false Q. Those are my two combinations. And then if I start with a false P, I could have a false P and a true Q, or I could have a false P and a false Q. So these are all of my possible combinations for P and Q together.
So false and false will still stay false, right?
Yeah.
And then true and false will stay true, or
This is and.
true, false, and false.
So here is my only true, is if they're both true.
Okay.
The rest of these,
If it's or, then it'll be true. It'll be.
yeah. So if we do a disjunction, P or Q, we have the same letters. We have P, Q, and then the combination. Okay. And again, I can have a true P and a true Q. I can have a true P and a false Q. I can have a false P and a true Q, or I can have a false P and a false Q. If you look at this, you see a pattern: true, true, false, false, true, false, true, false. So that's kind of the pattern. But how I was saying it is how you find that. Now, if they're both true, or is true. If one is true and the other is false, it's still true. The only way I get the false is if they're both false. We're constructing a truth table for not P or Q. My basic letters are, oops, wrong color. My basic letters are P and Q. So those are my first two columns. But then I need this not P.
Oh, we always started with P, Q, and then whatever.
Yeah, whatever your basic letters are. And then if you have any knots in there, you throw in a column for each knot. And then you have a column for the actual, oops, I forgot to put the P in there, the actual conjunction or disjunction that you're testing out. Okay. So I have the two letters. So my first column is going to be true, true, false, false.
So it's gonna have two of each, right?
Yeah. And then I get true, false, true, false. Okay. Not P. If P was true, not P is false. And if P was false, not P is true. So this column is the opposite of that one. Okay. And then when I look at the outcomes, I have not P or Q. So I've got an or. So I have true or false. That's true. False or false is false. True or true is true. And false or true is true. So here's my only false.
Why are we making them first? Wait. How come on the fourth column you got true on top and not false?
Here?
Yeah. Did you match it with
true or false? It's these where we're looking at these two together.
Okay.
So true or false makes true because it's an or.
That's what I'm saying. Why to make the first be confused? You're not even using it.
We used it to find this one.
And to find the other column, use the next column.
So to find not P, we first we start with P and Q because those are our basic letters. Then to find not P, we use the P column and do all the opposites. Okay, so if I have a P, not P and not Q, my basic letters are P and Q. And then I need a not P column, a not Q column, and then my conjunction column. Okay, so P can be true with a true Q, or we can have a true with a false Q, or I can have a false with a true Q, or I can have a false with a false Q. And then not P based off of P is the opposite. And then not Q based off of Q is the opposite. And then I'm looking at an and. So when I combine these, I have to remember that they both have to be true in order for the final product to be true. So I have false and false is false, false and true is false, true and false is false, and then true and true is true. So P and Q had to be false to get not P and not Q true. So my original statements both had to be false in order for this statement to be true. Does that make sense?